Welcome to Technado.
Welcome back to another episode of Technado. I'm your host, Sophie Goodwin, looking forward to another hour of probably movie references that I won't get and tech news that I will get, hopefully. We're going to talk about Apple WWDC, talk about some interesting security news that's been going on this week. And with me, of course, is Don Pezet. He's returning from his short hiatus. Don, how are you?
I am doing well. I survived another trip to Chicago, which shouldn't be a surprise, but strangely is. I am back and just in time to catch some of the new Apple news that we'll cover. But there's other stuff in Linux, Microsoft, so on. So we got a good show lined up.
Well, I'm glad you got out of there unscathed. We also have Daniel Lowry, and usually I'm kind of mean to Daniel when I introduce him. I kind of regret it, but not enough to not do it. So,
okay,
hi,
I can
Daniel.
live with that.
Yeah, you get no introduction. Hi, Daniel.
I'm just sitting here thinking about how statistically, if Don keeps going to Chicago, he will be killed.
The numbers are not on your side.
No, they're not. They don't call us Chirac for nothing.
How often do you have to fly out there? Is that like a biannual thing or a semi-annual thing?
No, I'm there like quarterly. Yeah.
Really? Yeah, you're right. It's only a matter of time.
Yeah, he's got 2 years tops.
Well, people do live there.
Not for long.
But you got the added, like, the statistics of, like, plane crashes and stuff because you're flying there. It's, we'll enjoy the time that we have.
You're really rolling the dice. Let's just put it that way.
We'll enjoy the limited time we have with Don, and we'll go ahead and get started with some tech news that's been going on this week. Like I said, we'll talk a little bit about some announcements that came out of Apple WWDC. They announced macOS Sonoma. So this article comes from Tom's Hardware, Apple announces macOS Sonoma with game mode, upgraded widgets, and more. So lots of changes coming with this update, but game mode seems to be the most prominent, important one. So gamers everywhere are excited, I guess.
I guess. So, Apple, they do like the most over-the-top marketing and promotion of their new products when they come out. And so normally when I watch something like WWDC, I got to filter out all the cruft, right? All the junk that's just marketing garbage that doesn't really count for anything and get to the real information. And normally, I'm pretty excited when they announce a new OS. They got up and they said, macOS Sonoma, it's the new version. It's going to be amazing. It's got great new productivity features. Let's talk about gaming mode. And
the irony.
The gaming scene on a Mac is not very strong because almost everything is emulated in some form or another or ported over. So it was just a bizarre thing for them to fixate on, but they did. At the end of the day, when you really dig into, hey, I'm a business user, how does all this new announcement stuff, how does it make a difference in my life? There's really just two messages that we got from Apple. So first off is macOS Sonoma has a new cutoff date for supported hardware. Your Mac has to be a 2018 or newer in order to run Sonoma. If you're running anything from 2017 and earlier, I think there's like one exception, but otherwise 2017 and earlier, you're stuck with Ventura. That's the last macOS that you're going to get. Now, Ventura is still supported. You'll still get updates for a few years, but the writing's on the wall, right? So if you've got a Mac 2017 or older, you are on the way to what's it called?
Extinction.
Planned obsolescence.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other takeaway was that they finally released a new Mac Pro, which is the ridiculously overpriced cheese grater machine.
That you can get the $900 set of wheels for, right?
Yeah. The one that starts at like $4,000 and then goes up astronomically. So they finally released one of those with an M series processor, an M2 Ultra. So that means they've now replaced all of their Intel systems. So Apple is no longer selling Intel systems, and that's a big shift. They've completed that migration to their own.
So their CIA mind control program is really taking stride, right? Can tell me you don't think about that.
I always think MK Ultra.
Yes,
every time.
It's the stinking MK Ultra. I don't know. Did you just put it on the side of the thing?
I'm glad you said it because I wasn't going to. Yeah. I was thinking it. I wasn't going to say it.
Do you know MK Ultra?
I don't know it personally, but I'm
aware of it. She was a part of it.
I wasn't present when it
happened. She's a product of the MK Ultra.
She's like, I wasn't in the program, but I did LSD. Yeah. Does that count?
It was totally voluntary. It was on my own time.
Man.
Yeah, I'm aware of it. I know what happened, or I'm aware of what happened. But no, I wasn't like part of the events. I wasn't present for that, unfortunately. I missed out on that one.
She's just pen pals with Ted Kaczynski.
So I all in all, I don't know if either of you guys watched WWDC. I would not blame you for skipping it.
Watched WWE, but no.
That was probably more exciting. It was somewhat underwhelming. And I think it was because they spent so much time talking about the AR, VR headset, and I generally don't talk about that stuff on the podcast, and I'm not going to start now because it's pointless and dumb.
Hold on, I can hear Lauren crying inside. She loves that stuff.
Did she buy one? Or?
No, she's not buying one, but like she's heavily invested into VR and AR, like as kind of like a hobby.
It's like an area of interest for her. Yeah.
Okay. You know, as a hobby or area of interest, that makes sense. For a business or productivity, pointless.
Yeah. Point.
I feel like VR, like as far as gaming headsets and stuff like that, and productivity, they're on opposite ends of the scale. I thought it was interesting that this article talked about like, oh, they're focusing on productivity, and then immediately it was like game mode, and I'm like, those kind of seem contradictory. And I never thought of a Mac as like a gaming. I think gaming like on a computer, and I think PC. I do not think Mac at all.
Well, maybe they're coming at it from if we have happy workers because they get to do some gaming, they'll be more productive workers.
I think it's more of if you tell somebody something enough times, eventually they'll believe it, right? Like. Yeah, how many times does Jaguar have to tell you that their car is an engineering marvel, and people start to believe it, even though they break down like
a
crazy.
lot?
Yes.
Yeah.
Plagued by electrical gremlins.
Or what is it? The Subaru Forester. This is an off-road vehicle when it's really just a sedan with a hatchback.
Yeah, it's this era's version of a station wagon, basically, right? Yeah.
So I think that's what we're getting. But anyhow, so kind of being pessimistic on this one, but not a lot of exciting news out of Apple. If you're one of those Intel holdouts, I guess I got to come up with my message here.
Yeah.
So if you're an Intel holdout in the Mac world, just know that your days are numbered. You probably already knew that. And if your Mac is older than 2017, Apple wants you to spend more money.
They really like money.
Oh, they do actually. Yeah.
Big fan.
I feel like that was the tail end of a PSA.
Yeah.
Like that was the tagline at
the
end
more
of the
you
TV
know.
show. Yeah. The more, I need the rainbow to come across the screen. Yeah, the more you know. And there was another, I think Tom's Hardware Talk, they had an article talking about that push away from Intel as well. So they did phrase it as like, this is the last of that push to move their product line away from Intel. Monumental for them. I'm really happy for them. Good for you, Apple. Good for you.
Other vendors are looking at doing the same. Microsoft has been working on their own silicon. And I think did we talk about that on the podcast? Maybe not.
We may have mentioned it. I don't know if we did
I usually wait until details are a little more solid, so we probably haven't reported on it. But Microsoft is looking at building their own silicon. Who knows what will happen?
Yep.
Okay. Well, moving away from Apple, because I can tell it puts you guys in a bad mood, we'll go ahead and jump into, we have some news in the world of Linux. This comes from a website called OMG Ubuntu, which is new for me. The article says, all Snap Ubuntu Desktop will be available next year. So it won't be the default offering, but it'll be there all the same. And the author of the article seems to think like this is an inevitability. It's not really like a surprise. He's like, this is long overdue. This should have been happening a long time ago.
All right. I have to be careful because otherwise we're going to have to rename this podcast like Don Craps on Everything. but this is an absolute nightmare.
This is the crapnado.
Worse than I thought.
It's the perfect storm.
So, I used to criticize Ubuntu quite a bit because of how bloated the OS was. They had so much stuff jammed in there. Even when you did a small, like a slim install, it was still a lot of cruft. Cruft is the word of the day, I think.
Yeah.
A lot of extra just garbage on there. And so for a long time, I was a big Red Hat person. I would run Red Hat Enterprise Linux in commercial environments and CentOS in non-commercial environments. And as Red Hat and CentOS started kind of imploding and doing weird stuff, I ended up shifting over to Ubuntu a couple of years ago for most of my workload. So I use it a lot, server, desktop, quite a bit. I have not been a supporter of snaps. I think I've been pretty vocal about that over the years. And Ubuntu is basically, or Canonical has come out and announced like, hey, here's our new beta of what this is going to look like in the future. And in the future, our desktop is going to be a immutable desktop OS, which is actually kind of cool, right? So your OS is read-only, can't write to it. It really reduces the attack surface. That's awesome. But it achieves that by making all of the apps snap packages. And so like when I install Ubuntu right now, the first thing I do is remove snap, just get it out of there, get the snap daemon out and remove anything and then just run my apps natively. That won't be an option in Ubuntu desktops in the future, probably in the next couple of years, year and a half to 2 years. And, that's enough to drive me away from Ubuntu as a desktop OS. I don't know where I'll end up yet. But on the server side, they're not doing this. They're not forcing you there, but it's just on the desktop side.
So, Don, give me this. I've never used Snap packages. I've always just been an apps person, right? Makes my life easy. been doing it for a while. I mean, I could compile from source if I need to, but how is this going to affect my life? Like, tell me what do you hate about snap packages? There's got to be a couple of like pros to using them.
Yeah.
All right. Break it down.
All right.
Break it down.
I want to start general here because this is going to apply to Flatpak as well. So Canonical has backed snaps. And so in Ubuntu and Ubuntu derivatives, you see snaps. Red Hat has backed Flatpaks. And so in RHEL and Fedora and all the other variants of that, you're seeing Flatpaks. But they both have the same problem. And the idea is, instead of giving you an executable, right? When you want to install an app, let's say I want to install Firefox.
Right.
Instead of just going and getting the install package for Firefox, I instead get a Flatpak or I get a snap for it. And they're very different. In a install package, you have the binaries and the support documents and all the extra tooling that's needed for that application to run. But then you just have a list, just a straight up list of all the libraries you need and other software dependencies. So if I install a .deb package, if I install an RPM, there's probably, with Firefox, there's probably like another 100 packages that have to come along with it to get that software to run. But the nice part is I might have 15 different apps that all require the same library, and I only have to install the library once. They all define they need it, and when I install them, they pull that one package and install it. And if I update that one library, it's now updated for all 15 apps, right? So it helps us to avoid dependency hell. Like everything's all mapped nice and neat, and it makes security updates nice and simple. I can make sure I'm running the latest version and off I go. With snaps and with Flatpaks, they introduced the idea of some basic sandboxing, right? So your application gets held to a certain area in the file system. That's nice. You get extra security. There's your pro for doing this kind of thing. But the con of it is it can't see the rest of the file system. And so they have to package all the dependencies in the snap. Now, their argument is, hey, you don't have to worry about dependencies anymore. If you download the snap for Firefox, it has everything it needs right in there. But what they don't tell you is if you have 15 different snaps that all depend on the same library, you now have 15 different copies of that library, and it could be 15 different versions of that library, and you are completely dependent on the application vendors to update those libraries. Firefox might update it tomorrow, right? They're really good about that. But then I might have GIMP or some other application, and maybe they don't get around to updating that library for a month or two.
Right.
And I just have to suck that up, right? And so your applications are bloated. They're larger than they should be. And you now have where you've got multiple copies of the same library. Your attack surface is like smaller and bigger all at the same time. And there's not really that big of a benefit. It's easier to install an app. You just install the Flatpak. It's one file. You install the snap. It's one file. And then it goes and does its thing. But I wasn't really having a problem installing apps before. So this didn't fix a problem I had. And it just added challenges.
Right. Okay. So it just seems like it's trading one set of, I don't want to say problems because they're not necessarily problems, but, one set of attributes for another, right?
Yeah. I mean, the way I look at it, who was it? Was it Jay-Z who said, I got 99 problems,
but a snap ain't one.
Yes.
but installing apps ain't one of them. Yeah. And so that's where I am.
Yeah, that does seem to be the way to go with it, right?
Sophie, I bring a lot of value to this stuff, don't I?
You truly do. I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't a reference to Jay-Z. So appreciate that.
Which is funny because we kind of grew up with Jay-Z.
Yeah, I just wasn't expecting it.
Tech entrepreneur Jay-Z.
Yeah, that's right.
So
he inspired me to do it. I know. That's for sure.
That's my complaint here is, Canonical's all about it. They want a good end user experience where when you want to install an app, it's just there and it runs. But man, does it frustrate the hell out of me. An immutable OS, I think is really cool.
That's cool.
And I feel like there's probably some model where the OS is a snap package.
Right,
I don't know, but that's not where we are.
And you have like a runtime environment for the rest of everything else, right?
Yeah, or the hypervisor model or something where the app. I don't know. There's got to be a better way to handle this than snaps, but snaps are what we're getting.
The author of this article thinks that maybe the emergence of an all snap desktop could provide the packaging format with an opportunity to showcase what it can do and prove the haters wrong. So Don, maybe next time that we cover this, maybe you'll be singing a different tune and you'll be like, I've changed my mind.
Here's the real question, Don. Are you going to give it the college try? Are you going to say, you know what, I'm going to install this and I'm going to run it and I'm going to work with it for 3 months and see if it's like livable?
Yeah, I will. I mean,
Yeah.
The Linux Plus certification,
Yeah.
and the LPIC stuff, like
They're going to update, right? Yeah.
they're going to update. They're going to include this, so gotta learn it.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that.
You gotta give it a chance. And just like I don't stay with just one distro. You always need to learn one RHEL variant and one Debian variant. Otherwise, you just don't know what you're going to land on when you go work somewhere and you've got to support a system. And on the exams for certifications, you need to know both.
Yeah.
So I'll give it the old college try. I mean, I've messed with snaps before when they were an optional component. Wasn't happy.
Threw up, wiped your mouth, and said, okay.
Took a long hot shower. So, in this case,
Playing that music from the Crying Game.
when the snaps are required, that's a whole new world. So I'll be curious. I'll do some performance measurements, and the guys over at Phoronix, that website, they always do a good job. I say the guys, I think it's just one guy. He always does a good job of doing performance metrics and stuff. Be curious to see how it goes.
Yeah.
Well, that started a little pessimistic, but I feel like we ended that article on a positive note. We'll hope that tune continues. We're going to move on to talking about some stuff going on in the world of Microsoft. This article comes from Windows Central and says top 7 features to check out on Windows 11 May 2023 update, or Moment 3. So are we going to go through this as like a
No.
here's the top 7, or are we just gonna go over all of them just kind of in general?
Yeah, actually, there were 2 in here that were important. I got to find them
specifically?
really quick. Yeah, because most of them are dumb, right?
It did say changes to the settings app, I think was one of the first things that was mentioned.
I shouldn't say they're dumb. Let me just say,
They're
most of them
really dumb.
most of them are non-impactful. In the new Windows 11 update, you'll be able to display seconds on your clock. Somebody somewhere cares about that, but most of us don't, and that's not significant. But there were a few things that I thought were worthwhile. And if you don't know how Windows 11 does their update cycle yet, it's just like in Windows 10, right, where you'd have every 6 months, a major update comes out that's a feature release. So the next Windows 11 one, they call it the Moment update, but basically it is what would be previously considered the H123 update, right? So the first half of 2023, this is its update, but the code name for it is Moment 3. And looking at the features as far as significance, there's more cell phone integration stuff, but one thing that I thought was really cool is Windows 11 is going to give you better information on USB 4 hubs. USB 4, we've talked about this on the podcast. When you look at a USB-C port, it's a mystery what that port can do. Does it do display link? Does it support power delivery? Is it Thunderbolt? Is it Thunderbolt 3 or 4? Is it USB 3 or 4? 3.1, 3.2? It's a mystery. It's a USB-C port, and after that, it's a crapshoot.
Yeah.
So in the new version of Windows 11, they're going to be, or the new update to it, they're releasing a new view where you can see USB 4 hubs. So you go into your Bluetooth and devices, and the USB controllers will show up. And when you look at that, it will tell you exactly what your ports are capable of doing. And I think that's awesome. I don't think they should have to do it. I think the ports are unnecessarily confusing. Mm-hmm. But this is a great solution to it. You can actually remove the veil and see what the heck is going on with that port to know what it's capable of and what it isn't. I think that's a cool feature.
Hey, you think that's just we didn't think to do that kind of thing, and now that everybody's complaining, it's kind of exposed the fact that this is kind of problematic that I have no idea what I'm dealing with here. So let's just kind of make that easy and add that into the operating system. You think that's probably their mindset?
Probably, or Microsoft looked at this as a way of saying, look, the IEEE or the USB consortium or whatever, they're not going to sort this mess out. So maybe we can step in and help to provide some kind of clarity.
Nice.
It's the best they could do. The other thing that I thought was cool that they added in was the ability to do kernel dumps from applications, from live applications. And hopefully you never have to deal with kernel dumps. But if you have a misbehaving application and it's doing crazy stuff, then the developer of the application will likely need a kernel dump to be able to see what the application was doing when it crashed. Now, the way we used to see that was we'd get a blue screen of death
There's the kernel dump.
And it would dump your RAM to the hard drive. When you rebooted, you could get at it. But that doesn't really help with applications that have just frozen.
Right.
If you have an application that freezes, the system doesn't do a kernel dump. And so you have to have the debugging tools installed to be able to go and generate that kernel dump, and it's a whole headache. Well, in moment 3, you'll be able to go in your task manager and right-click on any process, regardless of whether it's frozen or not, and you can just right-click on it and choose to generate a live kernel dump. And it will write the memory associated with that particular application to disk so that you can send it off to a developer and not have to have a blue screen and not have to, go through all sorts of craziness to get there. I think that's a really cool feature.
Yeah, it's a great feature because if you've done any kind of forum troubleshooting, you're looking and you see someone go, can you put the kernel dump in the forum for us, please? Because that's information we need. I always find it interesting. We're back in the day when I worked in a workstation support, people would say, I got an error. I'm like, cool, what did it say? I don't know.
I
closed it. Okay, well, is there any more problem? No. Okay, thanks for calling.
Thanks for sharing your story.
I didn't know if you needed to know that. So you're good then, right? Yeah? Yes. Then I'm good.
I'm happy if you're happy.
Yes.
This is a bit of a new take from Microsoft because in the past, they were kind of like Apple where they didn't want to admit that crashes happened. Crashes never happen. Why would you need to do a kernel dump? That's madness. That's crazy talk. But lately, they've been rolling out some features that are nice to have, like the ability to right-click on an application icon and choose End Task. Right? You used to have to go into the task manager to do that, but now you can actually do it from an application icon. Well, here, being able to do a kernel dump. Why would you need to do a kernel dump? That's madness. This never crashes. But we know it does, and now they made it easier to get there. So it's nice to see them let go a little bit and say, hey, crashes happen. Here's some tools to help make it a little easier on you.
Nice.
See, I always thought a kernel dump is when you're dating a high-ranking guy in the Army and you just can't deal with him anymore.
See, I thought it was when you ate too much popcorn.
Okay, all right.
I was expecting a KFC joke.
Yeah.
And,
not the direction I was going to take it, but we got there anyway, didn't we? I can always count on you.
People, the listeners right now are going, there's the Technado I know and love.
Well, we'll give you a little bit of a break from the Technado that you know and love. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break. We will be right back with more security news, so stay tuned for more Technado. Tired of trying to schedule your team's time around in-person learning? Isn't it a bummer to spend thousands of dollars on travel for professional development? What if we said you can save money and time and still provide your team with the best training possible? The answer to your woes is live online training from ACI Learning. With live online training, we provide our top in-person courses in private, online, instructor-led formats. You get to provide professional development in a manner that fits today's expectations. Entertaining, convenient, and effective. Our exam-aligned courses inspire the full potential of your team. Visit virtual instructor-led training at ACI Learning for more info. Welcome back for more Technado. We're going to be getting into some security news in this half of the show. It's always interesting, the conversations that happen during the break here. I know you don't get to hear them, but man, I wish you did, because I unlock a new fear every time. I learned what the word cruft means, so we won't get into all that right now. We'll go ahead and jump into our first article. This comes to us from Bleeping Computer. It says, WordPress force installs critical Jetpack patch on 5 million sites. So this, I'm curious, because this kind of seems like maybe it's more in Daniel's wheelhouse as far as to kind of break down what exactly is going on here. First of all, what is Jetpack?
So Jetpack is an immensely popular, I'm just going to read it right off the screen because they did a great job of kind of putting it out there. An immensely popular plugin that provides free security, performance, and website management improvements, including site backups, brute force attack protections, secure logins, malware scanning, and more. So obviously this is a good thing, right? We like Jetpack. And since, according to all the sources we could find, though Don try as he might to turn this into fake news, that apparently 43% of the web is running on WordPress.
So, I mean, for years, there has been a statistic thrown about that 40% of the internet runs WordPress, which was true at one point in time. I cannot believe that number is still accurate today, but we searched.
Don's going to cite some scientific study from, the university of somewhere.
I found 4 different places that were clinging to this 43% number. I don't believe it's true, but...
What were these places, like W3 schools and
like
some mom and pop no names?
So either way, a huge portion of the internet runs WordPress, right?
It seems to be. And then, of course, like as the article says, 5 million of these sites use Jetpack. And, of course, they did find a security vulnerability that is in like one of those, oh, no kind of vulnerabilities. So they said, well, we can fix this. We can make it better. So do that. And that's what the two things that I thought were really interesting about this article were, there were 5 million sites that were running Jetpack. When they say it is immensely popular, I believe that would fall under that rubric. If you had a Venn diagram of immensely popular, popular, and unpopular, yes, immensely popular it would fall under. And then the fact that WordPress just said, here comes some security. I always find that kind of stuff interesting, that they take it upon themselves to, here comes the update. You're getting it whether you like it or not just, hey, that update's available, you should install it.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing.
And that's really uncommon for WordPress. Like if you've ever maintained one of these things, plugins are getting updated like every other day. The WordPress install itself is getting major updates at least once a month. And typically, it just bugs you about them. It doesn't actually do it.
Yeah. Nothing like a barking dog at the bottom of your screen going, hey, did you install that? Did you, I've got to update.
And it's annoying about it too. Like and when you go to do the update, have you backed up?
Yeah.
Did you back up? Make sure you backed up.
Because if you didn't back up,
are you sure you backed
you're going to want to do that.
Yeah. So it can be a bit annoying, but in this case, they've shown where they have a mechanism. This reminds me of Apple a few months ago, right? Where they have a mechanism where they can force an update out without your approval, right? Now, in this case, it's a good thing. There was a vulnerability. They patched it. Nice that happened. Could it have caused problems? Maybe. Yeah. But your problems would be bigger if you had a vulnerable system exposed to the internet. So it's good that they did it.
I'm wondering if, like, when you install WordPress and Jetpack, does it, in the end user license agreement, maybe there's some wordage in there that says, hey, if we find vulnerabilities that we can fix, we're going to push those and kind of force install that stuff.
It's more than likely in there. Yeah. Now the fear, I'm gonna do my thing. I'm gonna turn this negative. Apparently that's my secret ability.
Right. I know where you're going with this. At least I think I do. Let's see if I'm right about this.
Did you see the news about Gigabyte, the motherboard manufacturer?
Yes.
So they put a system on their motherboard, for those of you who haven't heard about it, to where they could push an update to update the firmware, the BIOS, the whatever other circuitry, the chipset, and so on. So they could update it, and they made it easy, right? Easy to do an update, which means
also known as wrong.
Yeah,
like if updates are easy, you did it wrong.
And so there's a fear that attackers could take advantage of that,
right,
to modify your onboard firmware.
Well, because it was like a completely insecure like backdoor to the firmware that anybody could hijack.
So that's the fear with WordPress, that if they are on 43% of the internet and they can remotely deploy stuff and somebody goes rogue at WordPress, right? Some employee gets bought off.
God forbid, like some APT makes their way into WordPress. Now we got ourselves a lovely little supply chain.
That'd be one hell of a article to break, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah, build a
not yet.
Edward R. Murrow.
Yeah, don't worry. I'll make it happen just to win the award.
You guys are speaking chaos into existence.
Yeah, I could go next to our our JD Powers Award,
JD Powers Associates. Yeah,
we had a fake award.
The internet's in ruin, but we got stuff to talk about on Technado. I see that as an absolute
we got that
win.
clickbait fodder, so that's all that matters.
Yeah, the Technado website does not use WordPress, so we'd still be up.
Booyah! What's up?
That's on purpose.
We use something weird. I forget what it's called.
Don spent so long before the
episode.
It's
called Joomla. I mean, that sounds made up.
It does kind of sound made up. I thought you were kidding. I thought it was
Joomla's
like a
real thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. It sounds like something.
Now Drupal, that's made up.
I wouldn't know.
It's legit real.
I wouldn't know.
Hadoop.
Yeah, Hadoop.
Hadoop clusters. Yeah.
I feel like a lot of the
So apparently developers just sit around going, let's just make the craziest name we can think of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are they asking the internet? Is that what's happening?
Like when you said cruft earlier, I was like, I'd never heard that word before. So I immediately was like Googling it because I'm like, did he just make that up? Is that like a slang word he threw in there? And I'm going to get in trouble for looking it up on a work computer because there's so many words that come up that I'm like, that doesn't sound real.
So technically, all words are made up.
Oh, Shakespeare.
Right. If you want to break it down to brass tacks here.
Actually,
right. Yeah.
Technically speaking. Oh,
Listen,
man.
Sophia, I hate to call you out on the carpet in front of everybody like this, but you're a moron.
Got a comic book guy
I'm a
over
gentleman
here,
and a
right?
scholar, and I
Yeah.
don't know.
Worst episode
Here's
ever.
my. Just made me think of the guy on The Simpsons. That's the comic book salesman. He's like, "Here is my Incredible Hulk melon baller," and he's like, the Hulk is eating, and he's like crapping out melon balls. It's like the funniest thing I've ever seen on The Simpsons.
Yep. I remember that episode.
So funny.
Well, speaking of things that sound like maybe they're made up, we've got. I think this next article might fall in that category. This article is part of a segment that we like to call "Dope."
Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, so do.
I have to try to perfect it every time if I can. I practice on the weekends.
Getting really good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I practice. I spend a lot of time practicing that in the mirror. Anyway, so speaking of things that sound like they're made up, this article comes to us from Vice. It says Maryland license plates now inadvertently advertising Filipino online casino. If that is not a sitcom episode, I don't know what is. So it says there's a URL printed on these license plates that were like the default license plate that was issued for a couple of years, I think. And basically, it's just that the domain is different now, right? It doesn't lead to the same website anymore. It takes you to some Filipino gambling site, it sounds like.
So, like many companies and public organizations, Maryland is learning a valuable lesson, which is if you buy a domain and you put it somewhere, like in Hollywood does this all the time, right? They buy a domain and they put it in a movie, right? And then you don't renew.
It then becomes available again, right, Don?
And someone else can register it. And that's exactly what happened. So Maryland had a custom plate celebrating the War of 1812, which I don't really recall, but I think we lost the War of 1812, didn't
Was
we?
that the British and the Canadians?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that was a good war. I mean, not that there's a lot of great,
Yeah.
great wars.
Man,
But
I like my wars. Like I like.
I think they were celebrating the, oh my goodness, I'm forgetting the national anthem.
Oh yes. Andrew Scott Key, the national
Yeah,
anthem.
yeah.
Star Spangled Banner?
The Star Spangled Banner. Thank you. I'm embarrassed for forgetting the name of that. Where he wrote it, because he was watching this battle. At the bottom of the license plate,
He watched it on YouTube.
they put www.starspangled200.org. So it was the 200th anniversary of the Star Spangled Banner. Which I guess I could have read right off the screen instead of being embarrassed for not remembering.
Reading's dumb, Don.
Well,
True.
apparently they only bought the domain for 2 years. And after 2 years, their registration ran up.
But the license plates still stick around.
They do. And for many, many years. Many people have a license plate here in the U.S. for over 10 years. And now, if you go to, and I don't advise you do this, but if you go to starspangled200.org, you will learn about how if you deposit $100, they will credit you $250.
Oh, what site is this?
So that you can jump in and gamble today.
I like gambling. What's wrong with gambling? Especially online. It's the best kind of gambling, man.
I have seen this so many times, and I'm always amused when I watch, like, my kids will be watching a cartoon. Scooby-Doo does this a lot, where they'll talk about a website in the cartoon, and then you go and punch it into a browser, and sure enough, Warner Brothers has bought it. Like, it just points to Warner Brothers or whatever. They know that people are going to type in those domains, so they buy them and just hold on to them. That makes a lot of sense. But if they don't renew it over time, these URLs start to point to bad places. We've seen this with QR codes where it's even more damaging. Here it's a URL on a license plate. I think it just goes to show that, like, companies should not be so quick to buy new domains and instead leverage subdomains and subdirectories and things that you maintain control over for a long period of time.
Yeah. That's a true story right there, ladies and gentlemen. No, even though there is subdomain takeovers and stuff like that still is a thing, but it's definitely the more secure way to go about stuff.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, like, there's drive-by malware attacks.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah,
where if somebody can just come to a website, they can get infected. But the trick is, how do you get people to come to the website? Yeah. Well,
if we couple this with the new .tar and .zip thing, right?
Oh yeah,
the .zip domains.
TLDs.
Yeah. Right. It was not .tar, .zip, and the other one was
.mp4.
MP4. That's
.mov.
Was it?
Well, yeah, it was MOV.
.mov.
Okay,
You're right.
Gotcha.
So what would be really interesting here is if you could go to GoDaddy or Cloudflare or somebody who's a DNS registrar that has an API, could you query a list of domains that are about to expire? Right? I'm pretty certain you can. And
now you got me thinking.
And when a domain expires, it goes into a grace period. And the grace period is, I forget how long, it's like 60 days, not long.
Yeah.
So could you query a list of domains that are in the grace period and look for ones that have been receiving traffic? I'm certain you can do this because I've run into like old software applications where you try and go to their website and now it's, malware, typo squatting, whatever. But if you want to stage a good attack,
you could build a scraper with Python pretty quickly to do that because, like you said, it's got API. So you just look in the API, look at how that what it returns to you as far as information, and then see if there's anything that would lead you to think, oh yeah, this is in a grace period, or this is completely an open domain, so go for it, and then program me some outputs and then automate all that action to create a file of here's a bunch of domains that you can go buy for the low price of.
I have to imagine somebody's already done this, right?
I guarantee it. Just look in GitHub or something.
Somebody's already made
Look
this.
up, go to GitHub and look up expired domain scraper.
Oh, here we go. Expireddomains.net.
There's a website for it?
Expireddomains.net. 527 TLDs supported and rising. You can pull a list of expired domains. And apparently it just gives you a random list here. It just spit out 25 for me, but you can query it. It says there are 230,000 domains in the list. So you could find a domain that's expired that had some kind of traffic before.
Yeah.
Some of these...
Can you search out, like kind of grep it?
It's got a search field. What do you want to search for?
I don't know. Look up
Microsoft. No, nothing.
Well, look up.
I had to create an account.
See, your
you
web
got me.
scraper wouldn't need an account.
True. Well, I think this is a valid attack vector. Would this fall under social engineering?
Yeah, it would totally fall under social engineering.
So, another tool in the hacker's toolbox and something you have to defend against. All it takes is a spreadsheet to keep track of when your domains expire and make
an
sure
Outlook
you renew them.
email reminder, right?
Set a little reminder on your phone, your
Yeah.
productivity app or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm curious how you resolve something like this because there's like 800,000 of these plates that are being used currently, and that's printed on there. You can't take it off. So what is it? Just like, sorry.
I do know this. Since it's the government, it will have a lot of bureaucracy and cost way too much.
No, they're going to move super fast.
No. So they have a couple options here, right? Option one, they could reach out to the casino and buy the domain back.
That's true.
Right? And a casino is going to want to make some money.
Yeah.
And so the state would have to come out with some taxpayer dollars, which they probably won't want to do. It's like the equivalent of paying a ransom.
Especially since they're getting this traffic.
Yeah.
You know that they know that they're getting this traffic.
Option two is to ignore it, which seems like a normal government response, but it's not painful enough. So let me give you what I think will happen.
Okay.
The state of Maryland will recall these license plates.
Yeah.
And so,
like I said, a bunch of bureaucracy and too much money.
Yep. And so everybody who has these plates will likely have to get a new one issued, and that's the right thing to do. They can't have this casino advertisement driving around. It's not going to do.
And hopefully next time they will not print a URL.
Option 4, we invade the Philippines.
We already have, haven't we?
More. We invaded more. Hot war in the Philippines. There's a drone strike on this casino right now.
The whole point of this, the URL and like the website in the first place was to commemorate the anniversary of the War of 1812. So they're just commemorating the anniversary with another war.
That's right.
All.
It's the
What
War
better
of
way to
2023.
Start a new war.
Doesn't quite line
Ring
up.
out, doesn't roll off the tongue like
We'll have to workshop it.
We'll figure it out.
I mean, we've already sent troops, but
We did just announce we're building like 4 more bases in the Philippines.
Are we really?
Yeah, it's like crazy militarization.
well,
They know. They're hearing this
I don't
conversation.
know if you
They're
know
preparing.
this, but there's some threats to our democracy in that area of the world. So
Yeah. Well, as someone who was born in the Philippines, I support Filipino casinos.
Not just Filipino casinos. The Philippines' best betting site.
that's right.
Self-described.
Best betting.
The
site.
best
I mean, you
betting
register, you deposit 100.
Yeah.
You get 250.
Doesn't say what you get.
No, just
Deposit 100, you receive 250.
yeah.
This
chickens.
this is a more caring, thoughtful casino because if you deposit $100, they'll give you 250. That's generosity.
That is really.
If you did deposit 100 chickens and get 250 chickens back, you'd still be getting 250 bucks.
That's.
I'm sorry. We'll move on before I make it worse. I'm sorry. I have to
I
apologize.
feel
for
uncomfortable now.
that. Okay. I'm doing my best. All right. Somebody's got to be funny. so we'll move on. That was an interesting one. You see what I mean, though? It sounds like it's made up, but it's not. It's very real. This next article comes
You
from...
sound made up.
Technically, all people are made up, Daniel. Made up of matter. Anyway, if you
You just keep going, don't you?
Man, I'm trying to get through this, all right? So this article is this next article is part of a segment called Who Got Pwned?
Looks like you're about to get pwned.
Fatality.
Yeah!
Probably a lot of the people that visited that Star Spangled 200. got pwned. But that's not what we're talking about in this article. This
No,
article...
that was funny.
Okay, I'm doing my best. It's a numbers game at this point. I just keep throwing them out.
Yeah,
Eventually,
yeah.
you'll laugh at something. If they're laughing with me or at me, who knows? This article comes to us from Ars Technica, and it says, critical Barracuda 0-day was used to backdoor networks for 8 months. So it was patched 10 days ago, but before that, it was under active exploitation since October 2022. So that kind of sounds like a big yikes to me.
Absolutely. If you're not familiar with Barracuda, they actually have a good reputation, but they make security devices, and their flagship product is a email spam and malware detection device. So you set it up as a SMTP smart host, and you set all of your inbound and outbound email to go through your Barracuda appliance. They also make firewalls and other types of things like proxy servers and ad blockers and you name it. They make all sorts of stuff. Well, I think it's always particularly embarrassing when it's your security device that gets hacked. And in this case, Barracuda security devices have been compromised. And this one's a pretty bad one. Like, once an attacker is able to take advantage of this exploit and get in, they can then use that as a springboard to target your entire internal network. Barracuda devices are designed to be edge devices that actually sit in between the internet and your system. So instead of putting your email server directly on the internet, you put your Barracuda appliance on the internet and your mail server behind it. So now your mail server and other things that were intended to be internal are exposed due to this system being compromised. So if you use a Barracuda email security gateway, you need to do an update right away. Now, where I get concerned on this one is Barracuda has an interesting model. When you buy their hardware, I mean, you can buy it as a virtual machine and run it. That's one thing. But if you buy it as hardware, you pay $10,000, $12,000 for the appliance, and then you have to pay maintenance for updates. But if you stop paying maintenance, the device still works. It just doesn't get updates anymore. And there are many people that, because of the cost, don't pay for the updates, and so they just think the appliance is going to run. Well, if you don't apply the updates, you now effectively have an open door on the internet, which is not a good thing.
All right, I'm going to turn this into a tinfoil hat segment.
Okay.
Because maybe Barracuda is engaged in some shady business. And they're like, we'll just put in these people that aren't updating, give us our money. This is completely just me talking out of my ass, by the way.
Yeah.
I do not believe in any way there's no indication that Barracuda is engaged in these activities.
I don't think they're nefarious, but they have made some mistakes before.
Have they?
A long time ago. So I'm talking probably
So they cleaned up their act.
probably 2010.
Okay.
I think maybe
Yeah, it was a while
2010.
back,
It was a while back. They had hard-coded admin credentials in their appliances for remote support. And so if something went wrong and you called support would say, okay, here, I'm going to remote in and
and do their
click,
thing.
and fix all your problems, right? Well, the password got leaked out. Or it got
Ruh-roh.
found in the source code, or it was embedded in the firmware, or they
Yeah.
pulled it from a software update. I don't remember. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But that was where they had to finally implement a new system where if you were on the phone with support, you had to log into your own appliance and click start a support session, and it would do a reverse shell and open up a reverse shell to Barracuda support so they could handle it. It was one of the first services I had seen that did that, but it was in response to them effectively leaking an admin credential. So they're certainly not new on the block as far as having a vulnerability like this. They have pushed an update out. So if you update your appliance, great. But the thing that gives them a bit of a black eye here is that this exploit went undetected for 8 months. That's a long time. And for a regular business, Daniel, what's the average time to IOC?
It's right around 200 days.
So that's
right
a lot,
there.
right? It's
Yeah.
right there.
Yep.
For a regular company.
Yes.
But if you're a security company, you would think you'd beat the average.
Yeah, I mean that's ideal, right? That if you're going to sell security stuff, the people out there buying it want to know that Well, if you get something bad happening to you, how long before you, like, I need to be able to trust you, and you beating those averages is a great way to advertise that you're a good security firm.
Yeah. If this IT security company is not safe, nobody is safe.
Yeah.
There's no hope for anybody.
Yeah, and I'll say, like, it's really hard to host your own email servers these days because it's such a juicy target for attackers. They want to get in there. There's so much maintenance that has to happen, and that's why a lot of organizations have moved to Office 365 and G Suite and all these providers out there that just manage your email for you. It's so much easier just to push that off on someone else. But if you manage your own email servers, you're going to leverage Barracuda or like Cisco Ironport or something to be able to provide that protection layer on top of it. And to have that get breached like this, that's a problem. And to go 8 months without being detected, that's rough.
It was really interesting. I did end up reading the technical breakdown of like what they discovered and how this worked. And they were able to, the flaw was a remote command injection capability or flaw, vulnerability, however you like to say it. And it was with Perl. So I guess, I don't know if it's with Perl or they were using Perl to run commands, but ultimately the attackers that they have seen in the wild doing this, that's what they were doing. So you have in Perl, they have this QX function. And if you want to run an operating system command via Perl, so as if I was writing up a Perl script and I needed to call something from the shell, I could use QX. That's one of the ways in which you can do it. And you've got a couple of operanders. You just pick whatever you like, actually. It kind of leaves it up to you. So if you want to use forward slashes or backslashes or parentheses or brackets or curly braces, it's up to you. Have a good time. But inside of those curly braces or whatever you use, you put ls-la. And it runs that in the system, and that output goes to a variable or whatever. You can reuse it. So that's how they were getting initial access into the system, and then they were dumping malware onto it. They had 3 different types of malware that they were seeing. One was called Saltwater, or that they were dubbing Saltwater, which is a Trojanized module that goes after the Barracuda SMTP, contains a backdoor functionality, so it gives them the ability to upload, download files, use proxies, and to send shell commands and work in or give it arguments through the tunnel. Then there was another one called C-Spy. This is an x86 ELF persistent backdoor, another backdoor system, but it did something a little bit different. Mandy had found this one. What was the big deal about this one? It basically captures traffic, the network traffic, and looks for interesting pieces of information and utilizes that for their nefarious purposes. And the last one was Seaside, which monitors if you're familiar with SMTP, the HELO and EHLO commands for C2 commands are coming in via that system, and it monitors, and if it sees the C2 instructions, then knows to run that and gives them the capabilities for that. They do have Yara rules available, so if you go to Barracuda, they will have IOCs, so the IPs, you can start blocking IPs for C2 traffic, and you can look for the malware files themselves because they have MD5 and SHA sums for both of those, or all 3 of those, should I say, as well as Yara rules as well. So you can plug that into any other detection systems that use Yara. You can find these and clear yourself out.
Yeah, now one neat feature of the Barracuda appliance, well, I'm going to call it neat in a minute to see why it might not be, is that, like, let's say you have a Microsoft Exchange server. So you've got an Active Directory, your user accounts are in there, mailboxes are created. The Barracuda device can tap into your Active Directory to fully populate the list of users. And that way, when it receives email, if there's email for addresses that don't exist, it can throw them away before it even makes it to your email server. Kind of nice, right?
Yeah.
Or if a user account has been disabled or something, it can prevent that email from coming in because it can read the Active Directory. Well, when you get that configured, what you're supposed to do is create a user account, a service account for the Barracuda appliance that only has read access to the AD to be able to enumerate a list of valid email addresses, and that's it. But let's say you were lazy and you said, I'll just stick a domain admin in there.
That never happens, Don.
I know. You stick a domain admin in there, and now the Barracuda has not only a connection to your AD server, but it's got way more access than it should. Even if it's just a read-only admin,
Right.
once the attacker compromises the Barracuda device, it's now got a valid connection into your AD, and this whole disaster just got even worse. So that shows why it's so important when we configure credentials for appliances like these that they always have the minimum amount of access necessary.
Least, what is that? Least privilege? Principal
Least privilege, you got it.
See, I'm picking something up. I'm learning.
There you go.
I love going through and reading the comments on some of these articles because it's just it's stuff that like I don't. They're so snarky about it because there's just one guy that's like the Pearl motto. There's more than one way to do it. The unofficial addendum. Most of them are stupid. And like I just read that and I'm like, man, this guy. You can tell this guy's fed up. I just love going through and reading the commentary. It's like you guys, but online.
Justin used to dry heave if you said Pearl.
Some of this stuff is armchair quarterbacking. You know, it's easy to sit here and criticize, but some of it's pretty darn funny.
It is. It's at the very least.
It's entertaining.
It is entertaining.
Yeah.
Which sometimes is, I bet you that's what people say about the podcast. At the very least, it's entertaining. So with that being said, I do want to mention before we sign off, Technado is sponsored by ACI Learning, the people behind IT Pro. If you're listening from the Technado website, look for that sponsored by button. You can click that to go to the IT Pro website. If you want to support the podcast, check out those courses. You'll see Don, Daniel, and myself in some of those courses, helping you learn about IT, cyber, etc. You can use the promo code Technado30 for a discount on an IT Pro membership. And you can also check out the webinars and live on social events that ACI Learning hosts. If you miss it live, you can always check the YouTube and LinkedIn channels to watch them back later. We've got one coming up in a couple of months. It's going to be myself and Anthony Sequeira. So keep an eye out for that. Should be pretty fun. With that being said, is there anything that I am forgetting or any additional commentary or just insulting remarks you want to throw my way? That's what I thought.
I know, so much opportunity.
Lawsuit. No. Okay, well, I guess that's going to wrap it up. Thanks so much for joining me for this conversation, guys. Not that you had a choice. And thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Technado. We'll see you next time.